interesting aspect a person can have is if they have the courage and interest to participate in lifting off from the cult. So this is the lift off period. And it's with experimentation, growth, exploration. This is the lift-off marriage. Now, once you start lifting off, there's a certain, the whole evolution of mankind has gone through its reptilian period. So we have a reptilian brain, and it's going through the mammalian period. We have a mammalian brain. We go into the imaginative period, the human, animal. And then we have endogenous DMT, the pineal gland, the hypothalamus, endogenous DMT, this ability to have transcendent experiences that no animal, that no sociopath has. Meaning someone who's in a sociopathic state, they're in survival, the culture is beating them, they don't know what to do, they're just trying to get through the day, they're in a sociopathic state, they're deep in the reptilian brain. Mammals don't have it. You're studying this, you're happy, etc. But, this is nice, sex is pleasurable. If you have a sexual experience that releases the endogenous, that's the naturally producing DMT. DMT is actually produced in the body. It's a Schedule I illegal drug in a dysfunctional culture that I'm sure if it could arrest people for having sacred experiences in their own brain would descend on them in a heartbeat, but they haven't figured that one out. So, but there is actually naturally produced DMT in the brain that when you have transcendent sexual experiences, when you have out-of-body lucid dreamings, when you have near-death experiences where you go into these radiant states, where just as when taking actual, out external DMT in enough of a dose, you break through the cultural, you experience that lift-off, you go off into this space, and just disclosure, I have not taken the physical DMT, but I have had a number of transcendent experiences that give me a hint of what they're talking about, and these are endogenous DMT. When you have such a transcendent state where it's nothing like your normal consciousness, and it's produced by the body, with yoga, with lovemaking, with energy work, with creative writing, with stuff, and you lift off into that beautiful place within the psyche. This becomes the terrain that after liftoff from the culture, one ultimately settles on that which is most beautiful. I mean, it's not hard to understand why. If you could sample every single food on the planet, so you broke out of the American diet and then you systematically go around the entire world and sample every single food from an objective perspective, you're going to settle down eventually in the food that you consider nourishing, that makes you feel the best, that tastes the best of anywhere in the world. And so it might be a wood-fired oven pizza with buffalo mozzarella from Italy, these kinds of bugs in chocolate from here, this kind of chocolate from here, crystallized ginger from here, salad with turmeric and avocado from here, and rolls from here, and nori rolls with salad, and you find your hybrids of interesting stuff, you might have apple pie with a chocolate crust instead of a flour crust, and the chocolate has chili and nut. You play around until you get something interesting. The place that we end up is the most fulfilling, valuable, nourishing place. And in the human psyche, the place that is endogenous DMT. That's the place, once you've lifted off, that is most fulfilling. So you need a partner, or it's highly advantageous to have a partner to go into that place. I'm going to take a break here. So DMT is one of the locations we end up if we're experienced because of its beauty, because of its elegance, because of its value, meaning as you boost out of ego consciousness, as you boost out of cultural consciousness, as you boost out of historical and physical consciousness into states of consciousness that have a resonance, a sound, a shape, an energy, and are more interesting, more dimensional, more beautiful, more integrated than stuff around here. One is having the experience much like the first moonshots, where you're looking back at the earth and you're seeing it in a new way in context. Now, when you look back at one's ego, when you look back at one's self, one's culture, from a state that is more energy efficient, more interesting, more vivid, more dimensional, more beautiful in the scientific sense of that word, where you have elegance, the efficiency, the grace of expression. It's a new perspective, number one. Number two, it's absolutely beautiful. It is a peak state of peace, grace, beauty, trust, curiosity, etc. So it's many of the peak human states with a liberating perspective. And when one looks through that lens, certain areas of a life, of a possibility field, of a history, light up as being echoes of that. Like, the grace and the generosity and the kindness that's here kind of showed up in this one moment with this person, but most of my life is devoid of this quality. So in that reflection, it allows for an editing process to take place, where it's like, I'm going to grow this part of me and I'm going to shrink this part of me. And what happens is generally as people's well-being goes up, their dimensionality, their intelligence, their range of emotion, etc., increase. And depending on the tack and the personality and how blatant it is, there's also a divergence from the culture. It can be, it doesn't have to be a blatant thing at all. Sometimes when people are deeply in security and they work in a corporate building, every time they walk into a meeting, everyone relaxes in that meeting, and they're very, very popular there. Other times it shows more up as, what the heck are we doing? This is no way to spend a life. This is not what our species needs. Change of plan, and this creates like, where did he go? So the level of discord, it can vary. But we're definitely looking at dimension, and depth perception comes when you can see the same object from multiple perspectives simultaneously. And just to illustrate that, if you imagine this is the globe, and I am, of course, looking at the globe. We're all looking at the globe. We are all on the earth looking at the earth. There's nothing on the earth that is not of the earth. Nothing. It's all, including us, we're of the earth. So we're looking at the globe. And if I say, what's the globe? I say, well, it's little white tiles that are one square apart. It's a blackboard. It's this and that and the other. The temperature is like this and that. Someone else in the next building is going to say, no, it's this, 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 this. And someone else is going to say, no, it's this. Someone else is going to say it's nighttime on the earth. I'm going to say it's daytime. So every single perspective of a given object reveals different data. But to get a real full perspective, in other words, to see the world with depth, is not to pick and choose, like, oh, I like his version of the earth, but I don't like his, I like hers. To have real depth perception, you synthesize every single view of the earth in the assumption that it's all seeing something true about something in a different way, looking through different values, and it's all there. Meaning the earth is all of those things seen through those eyes and those perspectives with that moment in time. Now, of course, diversity, we call them altered states. If we call it altered perception, what we're talking about is diverse perception. So anytime you have a completely new experience, traveling and living in China for 6 months, traveling and living in the United States for 6 months, traveling and living in Denmark for 6 months, you have an altered perception. The grace of psilocybin mushrooms, DMT, particularly endogenous DMT, if you can create that with orgiastic, altered states of deep tantric sexuality, or fasting, or running indoor, when you just put the body through its paces, and there are certain moments when that endogenous DMT is triggered, or ayahuasca in ceremonies. And I have a whole channel on all the dangers in our illiterate culture about substance. So I recommend at least 100 hours of precautionary research and study before doing this stuff, because there's so much that can go wrong in an emotionally and psychically illiterate culture to just plow into these realms, which are accelerating agents. They intensify things that are already there, but in many cases we don't know what is already there, and so we can't work with it. And then you want to do trauma work and understand trauma before this. But nonetheless, for this purposes, if you can dramatically deepen perception before going into and incorporate that new perception in your life design, it's going to be a more interesting, more dimensional, more conscious life. If you've spent a year living in 5 completely different countries, you're no longer going to just use the default of, for example, for a very long time, I would see low flush toilets in Europe with the 2 things where this is for urine and this is for feces, and the urine would use half the water and stuff. And I would not see that in the United States. This went on for like 20 years. 20 years of blatant waste and it's not like it costs more than $1 to add the feature. So literally millions and millions of gallons. But that's just an example. This is everywhere. In every cult, they do bizarre things for bizarre reasons that other cults have figured out. Other cults over here, they're doing them great. But are we learning from the fact that Denmark is happier than us, has more billionaires than us? Are we moving towards a socialist democracy? No. So it takes you traveling there. Your government is not going to go over to Sweden and say they do this 10 times better than we've ever done it here. Let's bring some Swedes over here, and we're going to do that because we want you to have the best quality of life. Forget it. It's going to be you flying all the way over to Sweden, changing your life, learning all the great things they do there, and then deciding what to import personally. And then maybe after 50 years of mediocrity, the politicians will get a few questions in their press conference, and they'll actually wake up and do a little bit of leadership. So in the psychedelic type terrains, there is an opportunity for new and expanded perception that is equivalent. It's equivalent to going traveling. It's equivalent to breaking out of the cultural orbit and doing things like nose licking and stuff and starting to think and all of that. But it's certainly easier. I mean, just, eat a mushroom instead of fly halfway around the world to Sweden. But precisely because of its ease and because of our materialism, because we say things like just imagination, as if somehow anything in the imagination couldn't be transformative, it's harder for Western minds to grasp the full significance of what they're perceiving just in imagination, that their imagination could actually catapult them to multiple dimensions and time spaces far away that could be just as real as this and certainly feel more real. And that can teach, even more importantly, whether they're real or not in the way we define real, which is always changing in our latest physics. The even more interesting thing is the question, can I learn from it? And I have had plenty of altered state experiences without drugs where I have visions about things and I come back and it's like, I don't know where I went. I can't say this or that did or didn't happen, but what I can say is I saw another way of doing things. And that way is more intelligent by objective measures than the way I'm doing things right now. And so I'm going to change the way I'm doing things. And that's the benefit of having more experience. I had that with Henry Ford in a book. A book is an altered state. It transports you to another person's life and another time. Henry Ford Sr., founder of Ford Motor Company, gave me a paradigm of education that serves me to this day. And so, that's another version. So biographies, of course, are part of that. And again, if you get transported to the 1850s and you see what people are saying has to happen and won't happen and stuff, it also is a mind opener because you realize that those people are so dumb they couldn't even imagine a cell phone, and yet they think they know it all. They think they know it all. And this gets back to the fact that 99.9% of all that is not only unknown, but we don't know that we don't know it. It's not even in the realm of where we can say, well, I don't know the answer of how long it would take to fly to Pluto. I don't know that. We're talking about 99.9% of the stuff. We don't even know that we don't know it because we're not aware of it enough to know that we don't know it. And so that's a big unknown. That is the frontier, and a lot of that is in consciousness. Now, this gets into marriage again, because as you begin to have a truer sense of who you are, now that you've traveled the globe, now that you've seen yourself in this state, now that you've had transcendent sexual experiences with this lover and this lover, now that you've had psychic experiences with this person to this way, now that you've had 1 hour phone calls, 2 hour phone calls, 8 hour phone calls, 20-minute phone calls, you have a sense of who you want to be. And there's a fair amount of choice, but you cannot choose something until you've experienced it. In other words, you can't make an intelligent choice of whether or not to include nose licking in your foreplay unless you've actually licked a few noses. You cannot make an intelligent experience about the impact of DMT, endogenous or otherwise, until you've experienced it. You cannot say that lucid dreams are or are not useful for your psychic ecology and bringing more vitality and creativity into your work life until you've had some lucid dreams. And you cannot say that you do or do not like eating grasshoppers until you've eaten one. And the cult that we are in, regardless of what moment in time, history, and place that is, precludes 99% of what's out there and would just as soon have it stay that way. We don't need any people eating grasshoppers around here. And this is absurd. It's fine for survival, security, and belonging. But as you get higher in Maslow's hierarchy of needs of self-actualization, you can't actualize yourself and you don't even know who you are. You don't know who you are until you have contrast, till you've experienced the opportunity to be in a wide range of probability. And you understand, I like this one. I really feel nourished, balanced, healed, and vitalized. I want to become like this. Now, this is not good for corporations who want you to show up and work long hours to do this and that, whatever that's supposedly about money. But corporations are not always good for people, even the owners, who are sometimes as enslaved by the ambitions of the cult that they've been given more than their employees, because you get owners of companies that need to be the richest people in the world, or this, that, and the other, and they're up at night frantically working on this. They don't have time to go off and learn and grow. It just depends on the person. When you have a sense of who you are, you get the final possibility of marriage, which is the spiritual marriage. When you have a sense of who you are before birth, outside of the body, and who you and your partner are outside of the body, you have the chance of real marriage. You have the chance of growth and opportunity to connect, not in a way that bypasses logistics, not in a way that bypasses the law, or just fly across the world without a passport and stuff like that. But you do have a sense, I like who I am when I'm in China speaking Chinese. I like who I am when I'm with this kind of person. I like the ambiance of friendship even more than I like the passion of intense sexuality. I like the endogenous DMT of 5 people humming and singing around a temple at dawn more than I like the rush of a black cup of coffee and the newspaper of the latest adrenaline rushes of the day. That's what I like. That's me. The more we know of who we are and the more ranges, the more possibilities we have to see that this person is the most beautiful, transcendent lover I've ever experienced, but has no interest in physics or this or that or the other. And this person is the most orgasmic mental explorer of my life, but they lose their train of thought when there's any body contact, and so we talk on the phone and this and this, and marriages start to show up in different ways. The synergies of value emerging in the way that both people experience value emerging, and sustainability, that phenomena in which both people experience more value in a relationship than they do alone or in any other way, meaning that is sustainability, meaning as soon as people are free, once freedom enters the picture, which in an evolutionary process it will eventually, once freedom enters the picture, you do not have free people saying, I feel worse doing this, this is a worse way to do the thing I feel worse about, I don't believe in it, I don't like it, this has no value, it's taking me in the opposite direction of where I want to go, but I'm going to do it to stay married or whatever. No, you have people saying this isn't working, so I'm going to do this. I don't like potato salad, so I'm going to start eating shrimp. I don't like shrimp, so I'm going to try some grilled asparagus. I don't like that, I'm going to try. You have people going up the pecking order towards their ideals. In fact, I'm trying to lose weight, let me have a smoothie. And when choices are available, which in an evolutionary process towards complexity, Terence McKenna has some interesting things to say about the trend towards novelty, which is in contrast to the law of entropy, where everything slows down and breaks and gets simpler, where the universe is winding down, where it's becoming more and more complex, which we can certainly see with our own version of nature and technology. The more we can create value in different areas, the more that we can mitigate pain, given that our brains amplify pain 500% more than they amplify pleasure. In other words, you have someone say 3 nice things to you and say 1 bad thing to you. that's not a sustainable relationship as far as your brain is concerned. It might be in a bank account. If someone gave you $5 and took $1, the bank account is still positive. The brain is a bank account that measures each withdrawal 500% louder than it measures each deposit, which means that you've got to deposit 600% more value to each negative withdrawal in the brain for a relationship to be sustainable. This is John Gottman's work, where you have to appreciate someone 5 times more at minimum than you criticize them, or they feel like shit. Well, this is amplification process. And so you have this equation of not only generating value, but synergistic value at least 600% more value than net withdrawals. Now you've got an arena of relationship, and then this has to start interacting with societal messages. You know, my girlfriend, when I go off with one of my masseuses for a massage at the restaurant, my girlfriend intersects with the culture and says, dang, those restaurant owners are going to think you're having an affair with that masseuse. And it's like, very possibly so. Well, we can't have that. I don't want to go to that restaurant and have them looking at me like that and da-da-da. So it's not only the intersection of, the intersection of, logistics and all of this. You also always have, culture, or, and culture's main weapon of trauma is shame. We are going to look down at you. Of course, that's what nobody wants to happen. We're going to look down at you. We're going to pity you if you do this. I don't want to be pitied. I don't want to look down. Well, then don't show up with a masseuse and have a massage at our restaurant, because if you do, we will look down on you. That's the way that we're going to make sure that no one enjoys themselves at our restaurant. We have plans for our culture, and they have nothing to do with your enjoyment. So this is some of the terrain. I want to briefly go back to value hierarchy, because one of the interesting tension points in value hierarchy is between fun and honesty. So, and this is just a good demonstration of why understanding your value hierarchy and your partners is key to a sustainable relationship. So, who wants to have fun? Me. Who wants to have trust and honesty? Me. The problem is there are some moments in a dualistic time-space continuum where you're going to have to choose between the other. This would be more fun, and this would be more honest. What's it going to be? And there are some people where, as long as they don't think they're going to get caught or know they're not going to get caught, they'll always choose the fun. But there are other people that say, no, it's not about whether my partner finds out that I kissed you and had sex with you, at 2 a.m. on this time when I was supposed to be at the library. It's not about whether or not she found out. I value the transparency and the transcendent connection that comes with complete trust and transcendence. The DMT states that we enter in our psyche are so much more beautiful because there's no part of my brain that is busy trying to figure out what lie I told recently that I might accidentally fall out of my mouth. I can completely let my guard down and go into these transcendent states, wanting to see, aching to see something new, wanting to see all of you. There's nothing in you that I'm afraid of seeing. There's nothing in me that I'm afraid of you seeing. And I want that so much that I don't care if she would ever find out. I'm going to tell her. And because I didn't, because it hurts her feelings, I'm not going to do it. So we're just going to, hold hands, and I'll explain why I left the library and da-da-da-da-da. And there's going to be no secrets in this relationship. And someone else says, no, that's so boring. Let's have a little kiss and a cuddle, and who cares about those DMT states and transcendent moments, and life's too short. Let's have a quick one, and if they find out, well, we'll deal with it then. Now, someone who sacrifices pleasure in the short term for a completely transcendent friendship understands the price that is paid when someone thinks a quick fuck is worth more than that. And so they're going to sacrifice that depth and that trust and that trustworthiness for a quick fuck. And so when someone lies, and it invariably comes out, whether it's a few days or decades, and it normally comes out more if someone's really seeing, meaning if someone really wants honesty rather than complicit, because there's a lot of people that basically say, don't ask, don't tell. In fact, I've had numerous women say, Dane, since you insist on discussing the nuances of what honesty looks like in this relationship, I know about guys, and the bottom line is this: be discreet, go and do what you're going to do as a guy, have some taste, don't let me hear about it from our favorite restaurants, do it when I'm on vacation, just don't tell me about it. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Well, I don't connect with these women because it's like, what do you mean? So you want a whole relationship based on deception and this and that and the other? I do not want or will not enjoy doing something where I'm having to, first of all, live in a separate world where you can't talk about it. Secondly, I know you don't like it or you would talk about it. Thirdly, I want it to be equal. So, I don't want this unbalanced thing of, I go and have sex with people and you feel you can't or whatever. And I'm not sure I would like it if you did. So the whole thing just feels shaky. So we are going to keep this in terrain that we can talk about. And some women just don't want to talk about it. So I either leave them or they leave me because they don't want honesty and I do. But the point is that there is benefits to every value hierarchy. And one of the things that breaks a relationship down is when, if one person's highest value is fun and the other's highest value on their value hierarchy is honesty, or if they're just, for one, fun is here and honesty is here, and the other, it's reversed. When those moments come where one has to choose between fun and honesty, and one person chooses fun and the other chooses honesty, it's a win-lose relationship. The person who's fun gets their need, always. But the person who's honest doesn't get the honest, transparent relationship they need, unless they end the relationship, which is often what happens. And what should happen if the person values honesty more than fun, because they're never going to get it with that partner that values fun over honesty. Now, the point that I'm getting at is there's nothing wrong with fun, and there's nothing wrong with honesty. Where the thing that's wrong is not clarifying one's value hierarchy. Expecting someone to value fun the same way you do because you do without talking about it, someone to value honesty the same way you do without talking about it, is not a good plan. And the marriage is weak in the areas the value hierarchy is off. Now, with honesty and fun, there's often a lot of charge. I'm not going to be married to you unless I can have fun. Well, I'm not going to be married to you unless you can be honest. Okay, there's no marriage. Oh, well, come on, you can grace it over and avert it and go a few more months before that comes into tension. But every single time there's a choice between fun and honesty, which I'm in Thailand right now, and that choice is every single day. Meaning, I've never cheated on any woman, and yet when I'm in Thailand driving through the streets and some of the most beautiful women in the world are calling in for a sexual experience at $30, $60, $90, which is absolutely nothing in terms of and these are some of the nicest human beings. They're not cold and sociopathic, and they give it really good massages and stuff like that. And I have complete, and I'm feeling depressed that day, and all I have to do to lift that depression into endogenous DMT is have an orgasm with one of these women, and I feel, floods of power and social credulity and acceptance and all this stuff like that. It's a big choice to say, no, I want honesty, because the depth of emotion I have with my sweetheart comes directly from the fact that she would never hide anything from me, and vice versa. And the depth of healing comes from the depth of emotion. So there's so much that would collapse if I've got secrets. So it's just not worth it. It's not worth it to her, it's not worth it to me. The relationship would collapse with that, with a betrayal of this value hierarchy that is our stated value hierarchy. And it goes just the other way. I mean, it's a sharing of, it's a tremendous sharing of influence, of ability to hurt each other and ability to love and heal each other. And an enormous amount of loving and healing has taken place because of that vulnerability, and the vulnerability is based on the solidness that I've never lied to her and will never lie to her. That she's never lied. Well, she's lied one time about a small thing, but I pity that part that's in rebellion more than, so it doesn't break the trust of her, caring for me and putting our love first. It's, this stuff there. So, so this is an important part of a marriage. The final thing that I just want to talk about is ages. And I realize that, on the one hand, we're just getting started. On the other hand, this is a very long, nuanced topic. But I want to say that in addition to all the emotions and value hierarchies and attitudes and cultural memes and stuff, there, in addition to the heart-mind-body ratio, which is ideally 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, there is a sense of ages, inner ages. Now, if you look at a ring of a 100-year-old tree, every single ring is within that tree. So if you want to know, did that 2-year-old tree get a lot of water? When the tree is cut, you see how much that 2-year-old grew. Did the 3-year-old tree, the 5-year had a hard time, so it's recorded in the time rings of a tree. Now, human beings have the exact same thing, where you can access through memory and through regression and hypnosis and just daily defaults. Some people, they feel about emotionally 5 years old whenever they have sex, for example. Other people feel 7 years old. Other people feel 20. Other people feel 50. Other people go into ageless, timeless states. So sometimes people, when they play Frisbee, become 10 years old. So there are activity triggers. And the real point is basically to understand that time is not static within the psyche, that the entire age is possible within the psyche at any given moment, which means that your 5-year-old may be relating to their 8-year-old in one moment, their 10-year-old may be related to your 50-year-old in another moment, their 2-year-old may be related to your 20-year-old in another moment, based on which ages you go to psychologically to do a given activity. And this is particularly if you're not totally under the cultural thumb of, masses, neurosis, and psychosis and stuff that, is just sticking you into, you have got to be this way or else, and you're not even coming from who you are. Now, here's the thing. The culture is very hostile towards innocence and young people, particularly American culture. Absolutely hostile. Patronizing it at best. Shaming intimacy, shaming need. It shames the young ages that are needy, emotional, honest, transparent, confused, don't know stuff, are not focused, are not competent, are not basically the masculine machines that America likes. Now, the thing is, why this is so toxic, is that every single good part of the magic and love and beauty and loyalty and devotion and DMT states come from the young ages. It's that 1-year-old little kid is the closest to that transcendent self that's beyond the culture, because they were beyond the culture. They hadn't learned all the crapped up rules that, you have to do this when you want to do this, and you can't say this when you want to say this, and when you think this, you say the exact opposite, so that this happens, and everyone knows you're saying the exact opposite, but they see you're sophisticated because you knew it. And so it's like, the kid doesn't know any of that bullshit. So they're just in beauty, they're in wonder, they're in innocence, and this is wonderful. There's just one problem, though. What happens when we're abused when we're young is it's so horrific that often we transfer our consciousness to our abuser. And so what we feel and identify with is not the horror and the outrage and the helplessness and the grief of being humiliated by our mother and father, by our bullies, by da-da-da-da-da. What we actually do is transfer our consciousness to where we're looking at the helplessness with the same disgust, rage, hatred of the bully, of the power person, and we're identifying with the interaction through the polar opposite, through our abuser. And this makes us feel powerful. It medicates the profound trauma and helplessness of the inner child. Now, the downside is that when our partner then goes into deep vulnerability, which they can do through transcendent sex or deep innocence on endogenous DMT, is our template for relating to that degree of need and helplessness and vulnerability and beauty and wonder is the hatred of the abuser towards that inner child. And this has to be undone, and it cannot be undone without going into the grief, the absolute tremendous grief of the child being betrayed by its country, by its parents, by its school, by its siblings, betrayed by the power structure. Because if you don't think America is sociopathic, you've never seen it through the eyes of a child. If you've never seen it through the eyes of the child, it means you've seen it through the eyes of your abuser. When you identify more with your abuser than with your own inner child, you cannot honor your own inner child, which means you cannot honor your partner's inner child. When they go into the most magical innocence, which is the equivalent of falling in love, and you look at them with disgust, with pity, with patronizing, like, well, I'm never going to be caught dead there. You may be in this gooey love state, but that's disgusting. You know, that's the abuser. That's saying innocence is disgusting, transcendence is disgusting, wonder is disgusting, merging is disgusting. You are everything I hate. Well, it puts a huge dent into the flow and chemistry of the relationship. And so one of the things I look for are women who love their own little girl, the 0 to 6-year-old, deeply, who honor their little girl. When their little girl wants to play and smile, they actually change their day. They pick a job that allows them to play some. And not this little patronizing, oh, isn't it cute? And have a nice little dress. Oh, just your little curl there. No, not the perfectionistic patronizing of the sociopathic adult, but rather the true innocence of, you know, let's lick noses. Let's play in the sand. Let's roll around here and look at this worm. You know, that's the unacculturated innocence is where most of the magic comes from. That's where Einstein's beauty came from. And so when you've got that shamed in almost all American adults and many Western adults, trying to find someone who will take that seriously is very difficult. And it can create harm, where basically just as the 30-year-old man abuses his own 6-year-old, humiliates it, shames it, hides it, ignores it, tells it to get out of here, he wants to have sex with a hot girl, all this stuff. The woman does the same with her 6-year-old little girl. Then they start doing it to each other. This is not a growing relationship, because unlike the tree, all the new growth and wonder and magic comes continuously from the source pool of the 0 to 7-year-old. That's where all the magic, enthusiasm, filled with God, filled with Goddess, and filled with energy, it comes from those young ages. When they are tolerated, abused, betrayed, lied to, patronized, and humiliated by both couples, the relationship cannot leave orbit. It has no fuel. It's just an envious cycling of, I'm not going to let you get out of orbit, and you're not going to let me get out of orbit. And we're sophisticated, and we're bitter, and we'll hang in there, and we'll compare ourselves to other couples, but we're never really going to have a transcendent life, and that's fine. And we'll just tit for tat our way through an absolutely sick, disgusting level of critical relationship that just consists of what is and isn't fair criticism and and trying to look decent for other people and never enjoying our own life. That's the absolute misery of the perfectionist, idealistic couple, which gives birth to anorexic children that absolutely know they have never been loved in their entire life. They're just part of the perfectionist game for their parents, and they're hated every point they deviate and become themselves. And so they'll just starve themselves physically to be in integrity with the emotional starvation they've been enduring since birth, and are told is this wonderful virtue. So the inner ages have got to match up. Your 12-year-old has got to match and like my 10-year-old. My 2-year-old has got to be safe with your 14-year-old. Your 14-year-old has got to like having sex with my 30-year-old. Oh, I can't have that. What are you going to do with inner ages? What if the 14-year-old in her curiosity shows up? Oh, this is very exciting. Is slap her, tell her get out of there, I want to have sex with an adult. This is, again, cultural shame over the natural progression within the ages. The Thoi tribe in Brazil, which doesn't have any police force, domestic violence, raised voices, murder, rape, incest. In other words, a tribe that is vastly superior to our own, generally has a very mature, loving, older couple initiate a young boy or a young girl sexually at the time the young girl or young boy wants, somewhere between 10 and 20, when that human being is ready to explore sexuality. That young one picks an older couple, and the job of the older couple is not to influence the young one, so that the young one can explore their psyche and their sexuality at their own pace, in their own way, and get to know who they are. And only when they're experienced and have their own identity do they then partner with a young person, because now they've been mentored. And they've been mentored by someone secure enough that they didn't need the person to be this way or that way, just like the parents need their kids to, I need someone who beats the other kids at school so I can be good, Well, I don't even feel like feeling sports. Well, shut up. I don't care about you. You go and play that. You beat those kids. Or you're nothing to me. You're not my... all this bullshit that parents need, and then it goes on to, the kids who have been used like that just use each other in teenage years. So this is breaking that cycle and saying, no, you're going to have your first lover experience, if you wish, with someone that has no agenda other than being totally there to help you find who you are. And he's got the range, and she's got the range, and they've got the range of being able to meet you where you show up, at your pace, at your rhythm. And only when you know that, and you're humming gloriously in your own voice, in your own tempo, now you can see who's humming at your tempo in the group that's closer to your own age. And this is not age dependent. This is maturity and person dependent. This is when the child is ready, not encouraged, not repressed, when they are ready by someone who has the skill and the discipline, because they experience this as well, as opposed to being violated, raped, incested, and abused to actually have this. Well, of course, we are way too sophisticated for anything so nice, so we just date rape people in college and call it meaningless sex and separate our bodies from our psyches, and then wonder why we're so depressed, and we just take pills and get addicted, and then we're, as long as we can put on a nice smile and pull in a BMW, we think we're somehow advanced. So this is the terrain of marriage. And what a real marriage looks like is that every age loves every other age. And I'm talking about the ideal, of course. Every age loves every other age in itself and in each other. In other words, my 2-year-old likes my 30-year-old. My 2-year-old hates my 30-year-old, What are you doing? All that business stuff, all that paperwork, let's play. And it's, shut up, kid. I'm in a serious culture that doesn't welcome you around here. I'm going to get fired. So where every age loves itself on the inside, and every age loves the other age range. So you've got complete geometric flow of trust, love, acceptance, safety, growth, creativity, connection, and nourishment between all the ages. when the heart, mind, and body are equally met in all of the ages. It's not just that my 2-year-old body enjoys your 50-year-old body. My 2-year-old mind likes the fact that your 50-year-old is smart enough when my 2-year-old shows up to make some nice humming noises and say, and then the 2-year-old says, oh, that's what I like. And where you have that pairing between the grandparent and the little toddler within the marriage. So heart, mind, and body together, when value hierarchies line up in an intelligent way for the growth of the individual and an intelligent way for the growth of the couple, when in more and more areas you have the synergy of honor, persona, good, mask, values, events, the synergy to create and honor something together that is more than either person that could create alone. When you work your way through or just bypass altogether, don't get legally married so that you don't have to deal with 200,000 messages of what that means. When you start forming logistics, hopefully before a true marriage that is informed with the endogenous DMT perception of who you are, when you know how to navigate through the culture but can lift off anytime you want, and when you are transcending a culture with real growth and novelty as opposed to the conformity, then you start reaching these very, very high states, and there's several, of course, very high transcendent states that can be reached by meditation, spiritual growth, and endogenous DMT, in a real sense of bringing in presence, feminine presence, back to the infant. That sense of this is who I am, and my presence in a room without saying a word, without doing a thing, without needing to direct your thoughts. My presence, who I am, brings its message in stillness and in silence on the other side of all this masculine hubbub. And we meet in the joy of silent presence. Joy in the presence of a whole form of marriage. Joy in the presence. One whole species of love in my book, Faces of Love. Joy in the presence. A little bit about married, and I've reached this about 30%, meaning 70 lovers, decades of growth, 250 grand in therapy, reading 500 books in the last few years alone, That's the joke about people who like to read books more than actually do intelligent things. I've achieved a 30% marriage, and that marriage is 10 times more interesting than average, which means that many people are kind of hitting 3 to 10% of their marriage capability. But it also, what I'm trying to do with this thing is invite you to consider maybe it's not all about the piece of paper. Maybe that you can be married to someone more than you've been married to anyone with a look. And on that level, you are soulmates. But you may never realize that potential. You may never have a logistical thing. They may not have the marriage thing. They may actually be married. But you're connecting as a real synergistic partner with a part of their persona, because that's the other, you've got the full range of emotions, but we also have the full range of personas that show up in different contexts. I'm this person when I'm in Thailand, I'm this person when I'm in this hotel in Thailand, and I'm this person when I'm in this hotel. Now, all of them are honest, all of them are thinking and stuff, but I feel different. I behave differently based on the surrounding. Okay, have fun with this, and I would invite you to note anything you'll do or allow. Maybe nose licking, maybe a conversation. Anything you'll do and allow because of this to improve your marriage with yourself and with others.